Hello, this is Jamie Magrich. Welcome to Jamie's Craft Table. Today I'd like to show you how I made this card. It's a simple stamping card, well, except I used a die cut here, so I guess it's not. But it's very simple. So let's get started. Let's go over the consumables first. I have a piece of white. This is the Whisper White, which is 3 by 4 1/4. I have a black layer that is 3 1/8 by 4 1/8, so it's like very tiny little edge there. I have a piece of Highland Heather, which is 3 3/8 by 4 5/8, and again, there's just going to be a tiny edge. Then I have a piece of Designer Series paper. This is the Perennial Essence, and it's 4 by 5 1/4. And then my card base, which is 5 1/2 by 8 1/2, scored and folded at 4 1/4. I have a piece of masking paper. The original one I just used a Post-it note. You can do either one. Works just fine. Maybe I'll just use my Post-it note again, and I cut a oval with the largest of the layering oval dies. You can use any shape you want, or not use a shape at all. And then I cut a little scalloped Highland Heather trim. This is about 1/4 inch. I think my original was even a little bit smaller, and I used this die from the Stitch So Sweetly. So those are all my pieces. Actually, I'll just show you with the Post-it note so you can actually see what I did. Okay, for the stamp sets, we have Soft Spring. I'm using this one, those 3 pieces there. I use Vibrant Vases. I use this vase here. And then I use this stamp from Very Versailles. Then I used one of our masks. I think this one's retiring. I'm not 100% on that. For inks, I have Daffodil Delight, Memento, Highland Heather, Balmy Blue, and Gray Granite. And I think I'm going to need a scratch paper for part of it, so let's bring that in. And let's get started. Okay, so on here, I'm going to start with this. We're going to start with the black ink, the Memento, and we're going to start with the little vase. Ink that up really well. And about 1/2 inch from the bottom, I am going to stamp this vase. And it's way over on the right hand side. For anybody that's new here, I tend to work in quadrants. I have or thirds, so you divide the paper into thirds, and wherever those intersect is where your primary display or arrangement's going to be. Okay, so that one's done. Now I'm going to bring in this one, and again I'm going to ink it up with the Memento black ink. And I'm going to bring in a Post-it note, and I want to put it at the top of this vase because I don't want the stems to show through the vase. The vase is like a ceramic one in my opinion, so I don't want those stems to show. I'm going to turn it over this way and ink it this way. It's easier for me to get a good coverage. Okay. Now I'm going to stamp this up there. Now if you wanted your stem to show in your vase, don't bother masking. It works either way. I just didn't want that to show. Okay, so there's that part. Alright. Now I'm going to come in with the Balmy Blue. forgot a stamp. I need the one to fill it in, this one. So let me grab that. Okay, think that up. And I'm going to stamp right over this vase. Try to line it up. Hope my head doesn't get in your way. Perfect. Okay, now I'm done with that color. I'm going to come in with the, oh, and I forgot a color because I needed green. Dewy, okay, Highland Heather. Open that up. Sit in shot. Okay, and I'm going to bring in the filler for the wisteria. This one I'm using it sort of like a lilac. And I'm going to stamp it. How I get hair on it from the time I put it on my block to the time I pick it up, I don't know. Because I checked before the video, and then I'm stamping it again without re-inking it a couple times to make that a little bit fuller of an image. Okay. Okay, let me grab a green. Probably use Pear Pizzazz, and it's not over here. It's got to be right here. Here we go, Pear Pizzazz. Might have even used a lighter one, but we'll go ahead and use this. And the fill-in for the leaves. I don't know if you can see them. And I'm going to fill those leaves in, and luckily it didn't land wrong side up. So it fell off my block. I guess I need to clean them. Okay, awesome. Okay. Now I'm going to take this stamp from Very Versailles. Make sure it's right side up. I'm going to bring the gray granite. I'm going to ink up the stamp. I'll bring in the scratch paper because I don't want it to be dark. I want it to be very light. Stamp it off once. And then I'm going to just come in and stamp around this image a little bit. That looks pretty good. Okay, I probably could have just stamped right over it, which is maybe what I did the first time. But okay, then I'm going to come in with my mask. And I'm going to put it over so that most of it shows. I'm going to come in with another piece of Post-it because I got a little bit showing of the paper on this side and I don't want it to get ink on it. So anywhere I don't want the masking to show, I'm going to cover it up. Come in with the mask, and you can tape it down, but I'm not going to. And I'm going to come in with my sponge. I have put it on a binder clip. And Daffodil Delight ink. I'm going to get some ink on my sponge. And I'm going to try not to go over my flowers. I'm just going to very softly put some of these polka dots on here. You need to lift it up to look. I think I want a few more. Okay, that's better. Okay, I'm going to take this off and we can assemble our card. Okay, so let's bring in the pieces. Bring in my snail. And I'm going to mount this piece to the front of my card base. Doesn't really matter which way it goes because we're going to be covering most of it up. It's mostly just a colorful background for the stamped image. Okay, and this purple layer is going to get centered right on the top of that. I know I'm using more snail than I need to. I just don't like my things to fall apart. Okay, let's put that aside for a minute. Now we're going to mount this piece to our black piece. You can see that this gets in the way. Okay, we'll bring this back in and we'll layer that on top of the Highland Heather. Make sure it's right side up. Now like that, that's a simple stamping card. You wouldn't have to do anything else to it. It has quite a few layers to it, but it's all simple stamping. But I'm going to add this little shelf so that my vase doesn't look like it's floating in midair. And what I did is I brought in some dimensionals. This one's might work for the mini dimensionals. Let's see. And I think it's probably easier. I'm going to bring in a longer scissor. There's an edge on all the dimensionals, and I've just cut a thin little edge, or thin little strip. Mounted that on the back of this. Okay, took the back off, backing paper off. Okay, then I figured out where I wanted it. So the vase looked like it was sitting on the shelf. Set it down. And I took my snips. These aren't them. There they are. And right at the edge of that designer series paper, I did a little snip. Right at the edge of the designer series paper. So it might be easier to mount it all together and then trim it off before you put it on the card. But there's our card. Here's the one we just did together. Here's the one I did previously. Well, thank you for joining me at Jamie's Craft Table. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope you can find a little bit of time to play with some stamps, ink, and paper.